Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on the Do Something podcast. Today, we're joined by Will and Maria Bales, parents of Nick Bales, who founded Brought to Reality back in 2016 as a sophomore at Arapahoe High School near Denver, Colorado. Nick suffered from anxiety and depression, and by focusing on his brand, he was able to stay creative, keep busy, and stay grounded in reality. Through his brand, Nick sought to bring awareness to teen mental health and to end the stigma surrounding mental illness.
Nick strived to encourage compassion among his peers. In his college essay, Nick wrote, "We should all help each other get through the difficult times." Unfortunately, Nick did not have the opportunity to apply to college because he lost his battle against mental illness on September 29, 2018.
Today, his legacy continues through his parents who are here to share his story.
First of all, thanks so much, you guys, honestly, for having us on your show and bringing awareness. Nick was 15 years old when he first started BTR. He was always an entrepreneur at heart, loved designing, he was very creative, always was drawing and painting. He started BTR, started trying to sell apparel through his friends and stuff. And a lot of them some of the kids would make fun of him and kind of be like, "I can't believe you're only 15 years old. Who do you think you are? Like, why would you be doing this?" And he would be like, "Just watch me. Someday it's going to be really big." He was kind of confident and cocky, but at the same time, I think he always lacked a little bit of insecurity deep down inside. He started selling to friends. He was really proud of himself. We were proud of him. We were very supportive of him. And Nick was a kid who was very, very involved, very active, very outgoing, had tons of friends, had a girlfriend, played lacrosse and hockey. Didn't really care for school a whole lot, wasn't like his big thing. But, when he was a sophomore, I noticed that he was getting a little agitated at times and just kind of losing his temper a little bit. We were always in therapy for about 4 years. And that's when we started him on a low dose of Lexapro, and it really kind of evened him out. He was doing really great. His anxiety levels were kind of lower. He wasn't feeling so anxious. Again, we were still seeking therapy. We thought that we had turned a corner with Nick. He seemed to be doing awesome. We're planning spring break, his senior year, to go with a bunch of kids to Mexico. He was so excited about BTR. He was getting ready to do a huge drop, and he was going to do it at a convention center, and he was really excited. He just seemed like he was so happy. And then went to homecoming, had the best party of his entire high school years here at home. Just honestly, he was just doing great. And then unfortunately on September 29th, 2018, I went to check on him and my son was gone.
One of the pieces that we'll talk about is the fact that as Nick seemed as happy as he was and was able to tell the therapist what the therapist would want to hear, we call it putting on the mask, right? And we know a lot of people that wear masks, right? One of the biggest messages about BTR is be true to yourself and not hide behind what you think people want to see of you, right? To just be who you are. The reason Nick called it Brought to Reality is because any young adult that struggled with any form of mental health issues, that it's often you choose some sort of vice, drugs, alcohol, whatever else. And when you choose a vice like that, it's a dangerous place to be. So at some point you need something to bring yourself back to reality, right? So a lot of kids in high school, you'd see marijuana, you'd see coke, you'd see a lot of different drugs. And it's, if it goes beyond more than just experimentation, self-medicating with one of those vices is one of the biggest flags that either parents should be looking for or friends should be looking for in order to help that person identify that they are struggling. So one of my big points with this is to make sure that young adults realize that, you know, you've heard the saying, it's okay to not be okay, right? But you can still wear that mask and not admit to yourself that things aren't right, right? And the whole point is to admit to yourself that you do struggle, take off the mask, and then find some sort of therapy that might work for you. One of the pillars of Brought to Reality is we would often find when parents would unfortunately join our club, which nobody wants to be part of, we'd over and over hear, well, what else could I have done? And because there is no playbook to having kids grow up, being parents, people don't always know what the right thing to do for their kid is, right? And the only advice I can give is the fact that there are alternatives to just sitting on a couch. So part of BTR is educating and identifying that there are alternative therapies, whether it be dog therapy, horse therapy, some form of animal therapy, art, music, whatever it might be that that person can use, right, to help get through difficult situations. So again, BTR wants to identify, educate, and then we want to help the kids that can't afford it, because we don't want the cost of something to let or allow a young adult to make a bad decision.
I understand that there's a lot of supporters or people that were friends of Nick that really started like this brand and like this community afterwards. But how does that kind of look like, or how did that look like after, and how does that kind of look like now?
I think in our community, the way BTR started was as soon as we lost Nick, kids wanted a piece of him, right? So they started ordering from his website. And then 2 weeks later, I had so many people saying, what's going on? What's going on? I just remember it being a fog. And I just, one day randomly on my Facebook spoke about mental illness. And I told everybody, all the parents out there, to listen to your kids, pay attention to your kids, because this can happen to you. We didn't see it coming. We thought Nick was doing amazing. And somehow us becoming vulnerable and sharing our story and what has happened with us and what mental illness is has really created such an awareness in our community that everybody wants to become a part of, especially the kids, especially his high school at Arapahoe High School. It's the kids that are breaking down the stigma. They're the ones who are doing all the work on BTR. They're the ones going off to college. All of Nick's friends are going off to college and doing collaborations with BTR to bring awareness to their house, to their college, wherever they're at. And it's just, I think our vulnerability and unfortunately losing our son is what's helping to save lives. Because there's such a stigma around mental health, and we're helping to break it down, and the kids are right there alongside us helping to break it down.
And it's so interesting, at least to me personally, because I too, that same week that Nick passed away, there was also another student that passed away at Arapahoe that I actually grew up with. So that whole situation, did hit pretty close to home for me. But I know, being aware of that situation, I also knew what happened to Nick as well. And a lot of people I went to high school with actually knew him as well at Regis. And it's being aware of BTR for so long, and this kind of going full circle has been such an amazing experience. But you're so right about I've been at a mall before, I've been different places, and I've been seeing the BTR hoodies all around Colorado, and even some up here in Boulder. And what's so cool is that like you can, like I have gone up to these people and be like, oh, like did you go to Arapahoe, or like who do you know? And everybody knows what anybody who wears it knows what it means too. So it is like very inspiring that the children, like there are at least the young adults here, are still very present and still very aware about what's going on, and like are in one way or another eager to change that stigma of not talking about mental health.
We really appreciate you making that comment, because this is, Maria will be told day and night from people that she doesn't know, just randomly, you have no idea the impact that BTR has had on me, right? And we know for a fact that BTR is saving lives. And you know, it's bittersweet for us because with that platform, we weren't able to save our own kid. But because of that platform, the subject of mental health awareness has become so much more broad to a much bigger population. And it's becoming a main focal point within every community.
How have you kind of seen like the conversation about mental health change from like when you were younger, when you were in school, and kind of like now, like how has that conversation about mental health and suicide awareness, how has that kind of changed?
I think it's changing tremendously. I think the generation, like my parents' generation and before that, there was such a stigma, right, around having a mental illness. I mean, if you had a mental illness, you'd go in a cuckoo house. And that's all changed dramatically. And I think because of that is where I do think that social media is so good, because we're out there spreading the message and we're able to reach so many more people. And I can't even begin to tell you how many parents contact us saying, what can I do? Like my kid is telling me that he is struggling, or I think he is struggling, or his friends are telling me he's struggling and I'm not sure. So just having that open communication is it's night and day from 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. I mean, I have seen a huge change since we've lost Nick. Now, every time I'm watching TV, there's a mental health commercial out there. I think it's really growing, and I honestly believe that it's because of you guys, your age group, that's making all the difference. You guys are the ones totally tearing down the stigma. You're the ones who know about technology more than anybody, and you guys are the ones out there making it happen.
So the way I would answer that question is, what's different between then and now? Then there was no conversation, right? And today, you guys are hosting a podcast with regards to mental health. When I was a kid, there was no such thing as a podcast, right? So to Maria's point, you guys are utilizing the technology today to spread the awareness yourselves, right? And the fact that there was no conversation back then, and now there are a lot of conversations, and again, they're very broad. Geography has no impact. So it's night and day. It went from 0 to 60. So,
and I think you guys, I mean, I like to give young adults all the credit, because you guys are just so bold and brave, and your voice carries a long way. And you guys are the ones who have been so impacted in schools by losing your friends to suicide, that you're done. And you're like, we're going to make a stance and we're going to talk about this, and there's no shame. So I thank you guys for it.
I like to make the comment that adults perpetuate the stigma, and it's the young adults that are ripping it down.
I agree. Like, it's interesting to see, like, from my time in like middle school, we didn't, like, there was no talk about mental health, but it really was for me, and maybe for you as well. It was kind of high school time, definitely, where friends were expressing like the sadness or like whatever their anxiety they're going through. And it's been very tough through high school to see
others struggle through this and same for me. But I actually have a question. It's kind of, Maria, which you kind of brought up a little bit earlier about people coming to you to ask you questions, like parents, like what do I do? I was kind of wondering, how can we help others when it may not be clear they're struggling or are not willing to open up?
I think the bottom line is, like Nick always said it, and he says it in his college essay, you never know what someone's going through. So always be kind, always have a compassionate heart, always be empathetic, because, a lot of times, I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. That, let's say we walk into a grocery store and the person's being really rude to us. And we're like, oh my God, that person could have been kinder. And we're like judging that person, but we don't know what that person's going through. We don't know if that person just lost somebody to suicide, or if that person was just diagnosed with cancer, or if that person's someone they care about is in the hospital dying. We have no idea. So we need to always be our best selves and be kind to everybody we meet, because that can make or break how it affects somebody who's maybe struggling. If somebody's on the brink of suicide, if that person is thinking about taking their life that night, and if we use some kind word and just say, hey, I just think you're freaking awesome, or what you did the other day was so cool, or how's it going today, and you really take the time to talk to them, that could really change that person's whole thought process and save their lives. It's all about being kind and compassionate. And somewhere along the way, our world, we're so self-centered and focused on ourselves, and we're not thinking about other people. And we need to sometimes step outside of ourselves and think about, how can we make the world a better place, and how can we be kinder to somebody today?
Bullies learn their behavior from somewhere, right? Bullies got bullied, right? And unfortunately, that behavior is learned, right? So Nick's point of always realizing that you don't know what somebody else is going through, so therefore be kind and compassionate.
Nick was one of them. I stop now and I look back at when he was 15 and he started his own little clothing brand, and some kids were making fun of him. Now thinking and looking back, I'm like, that probably really rocked his world. Even though he came across as cocky, like, I'll show them, but deep down inside, that had to have an effect on him.
What did Nick's support system kind of look like, and what is BTR kind of doing now to kind of help other people and grow their support system in their community and find other people that are also struggling as well?
So I think, honestly, to be honest with you, I think Nick has a lot of great friends. He's got amazing friends. And even though I do think he shared a little bit of how his depression was affecting him with some of his friends, I don't think any of us really understood it. It took, for me anyways, personally, it took me losing my own son to understand that mental illness, it's real, it's a disease, and it can end somebody's life in a blink of an eye. And I think a lot of Nick's friends recognize the same. So I think, did Nick have a support system? Always. But did anybody know how to support him? No. His own mom didn't really know. I was sending him to therapy. We would go to therapy together. But even Nick was pulling the wool over my eyes. I had no idea that my son's depression ran as deep as it did. I had no idea. I find his journals and I read his journals now, and in his journals, he does talk about how he doesn't know how much longer he can walk this earth. And it breaks my heart. It kills me because because him and I were very close. He was like my little mini me. And the fact that he would share a lot of things with me and never shared that with me breaks my heart. Like, he was suffering in silence, regardless that he was going through therapy or not. And so I think for his friends, I don't even think they realized it. And again, unfortunately, it took us losing Nick to learn from this. And so now we have a support system. We're helping others to have a support system by, again, the simple words of be kind, listen, validate. If somebody is struggling, Listen to them. Don't tell them tomorrow's going to be a better day. Don't say, oh my gosh, what can I do? Or why are you so upset? Like your life is good. No, all you got to do is listen to them and validate them. Don't talk about yourself. Listen and validate them. That's the most important thing we can do. That is how you can be the best support system to anybody who is struggling, whether you know it or not.
So to our situation with Nick, knowing afterwards that Nick would speak to his friends, none of his friends told us, which, if we knew more, then maybe we would have been able to do more. From a young adult standpoint, if you know something that's not right and you hold it in yourself, right? You need to stand up for your friend and be a true friend. And even if you lose that friendship, it will be temporary, because the person that you're hiding their issues at some point will realize that you actually were being the best friend that you possibly could.
Yeah, a lot of this it's like, I definitely feel like if I were to go back to high school and kind of be in a similar situation, it's just so much pressure as like a kid and so much information that you don't know what like is going to happen. And you, like, as a kid, I guess, like, you don't really think too far ahead, and you don't really think about all the precautions and things that might end up happening. So like, it is something that I can see is like very hard for people to do. It's probably easier said than done, but like at the same time, it's now that there is so much conversation and awareness around it, I definitely feel like kids are empowered to share that a lot more. So
yeah, I have a firsthand experience exactly with this. Sadly to say, in middle school, I just moved in middle school, so I didn't have that many friends for like first year or two, besides one. And my best friend, one time we're at a sleepover hanging out, and he shared with me, really deep stuff about how terrible he felt about himself, and how he didn't want to live anymore. And he also then, told me exactly what, he told me that I can't tell his parents, or he wouldn't talk to me in that same situation. That was in middle school, and it was hard to, it was such a burden on me, because I didn't know what to do. I like always felt comfortable sharing stuff with my parents. So that's where I went first, because it was just too much of a burden for me. And I talked with my parents about what happened. And they helped out so much, because they knew what was right. And so they called his parents and told his parents, and he ended up getting the help that he needed, and he's still here today.
So based on my experience, I think, lucky that my friend was vulnerable with me and shared with me how he was feeling. But most often the case is that it's very hard for people to open up. It's very, very hard to do. And like you guys mentioned earlier about people tend to put on this mask to kind of show everyone how they're doing great, when maybe that's not the case. And I'm just wondering why that might be the case. Why is it so easy to put on this mask?
It's just shame. It's a stigma. And that's why I believe people put on a mask. They don't want to be judged. They're terrified. I know adults that struggle and nobody knows about it, because they're in fear of losing their jobs or not being treated equally at work. And I think for kids, it's that much harder, because middle school, high school years are just so tough. Kids are so mean to one another at times. They don't realize how painful their words can be. And I honestly, I believe it's all about the shame, and that's why people put on a mask. And I think for guys, it's the way we raise boys to be. You got to be a man, you got to be tough. You can't, And that is so not true. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful in a man than for him to be sensitive and to be vulnerable, in my opinion. And I know all of my friends' opinions and the world's opinion. But I just think that it's a shame, and that's why they wear a mask.
One thing that really frustrates me is that the statistics show between 20 and 25% of all people at some point in their lives will suffer a major mental health episode. So between the four of us doing this podcast, probably one of us struggles, right? So we all know that, but yet we want to judge somebody, or we're afraid of being judged by somebody because we don't want to share that, right? So I to that point, it's frustrating. Everybody knows it's there, but people don't want to talk about it, right? And again, I think your generation is making the biggest difference in the entire, since the beginning, to be able to bring that out and make it more acceptable.
So oftentimes when we go through life, there's like periods in our lives similar, like lead to like what we were talking about, that we get brought out of our reality. We feel disconnected and we don't know exactly what's going on. Do you have any like tips on ways where you can learn to be reconnected and brought back into reality?
Being brought to reality, ways that you can do that is by being present. If it means writing sticky notes all over your room, reminding yourself that this is going to pass. It's okay to sit in this thought and this feeling and then move away from it. Like remind yourself. You need reminders. That's why BTR is constantly putting out positive messages out there that this will pass. You can get through this. The thing is the hardest thing to break through with kids is that their frontal lobes are not developed. They won't be developed till they're like 28 years old at the highest age. So you have that impulsiveness that's not developed yet. And that's where kids need that reminder of, okay, I can get through this. I can get through this. That's why it's really important to surround yourself with a great support group that's going to remind you. The only reason I say that is because there's a woman I met who has been struggling her whole life, and she has 2 kids that are in high school. And I asked her, how do you get through your depression? And she would usually get really crabby and grumpy because nobody knew that she struggled. And she was internalizing all these feelings to herself. Finally, she came out and got the help she needed. And what she did was build her support group, which was with her 2 kids and her best friend. And she said, what I want from you is when I go into my dark place, I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to lock myself up for 2 days. I'm going to sit in the dark and I'm going to spiral into this dark black hole. I need to be there because it's comforting. And then on day 2, at the end of the night, if I don't come out, get me help. I need help. And that is the routine that they have. But knowing, she had so much. It was good for her because when you're struggling with depression, and you guys, I don't understand this personally myself because I don't have depression like that, but I've been learning so much from so many people that do. When you spiral into that black hole, there's a comforting feeling that you get from being there. And it's important to sit there. You don't want to rip that away from a person. They want to sit there. They need to sit there. They need to experience in that. But then as a support group, which is friends and family, that's when eventually you give them that space. Then you start talking to them and you pull them out of it, which is, let's be in the present. Let's do some deep breathing exercises. Let's go for a walk. Let's go be in nature. Tell them how much they matter and how they're amazing human beings and they have so much purpose. When somebody who is struggling with serious mental illness, they don't believe those things about themselves. So it's important to bring them back to reality by telling them how great they are and how amazing they are.
Definitely. I feel like so there's not like one size fits all when you're dealing with this. Everybody has their own way of kind of coping, their own way of
feeling better. I think that most people in their lives at some point will struggle with some type of depression, and whether it's clinical or if it's not, but like everybody has those feelings. And I don't think, like, I do feel like society so many times tells you like, oh, you're not supposed to feel those feelings. This is wrong. Like, you're not supposed to feel this way. You're supposed to feel happy, enjoy, pleasure all the time, and all these things, all these other good sensory feeling things, but like you don't. But I think there is like value and it's important to understand and like sit through and work through those tough moments, those negative feelings that we're told that we're not supposed to have, to see how we deal with them. Because in that you can learn a little bit about yourself and learn more about what works for you, so that the next time you can learn better and get through it easier than the last time.
My message to kids is screw society. And that's my message to parents too, because we all want to follow what society says to do. Like, I tell my husband this all the time. When I was in high school, a 3.5 GPA was, you were a rock star. Now a 4.2 doesn't cut it. And, if you're playing sports, you've got to be at the very top or you're considered a nobody. That's so wrong. I mean, what are we doing to our kids? We as parents are guilty of this as well. We want the best for our kids. So we're pushing our kids to do all these things that, honestly, what does it matter? What does it matter what society thinks? What the school system is telling us that we have to get this in order to get into this college? What is success?
Don't let your grades define you.
No.
Right? Don't let your success in sports define you. If you lose the championship game, doesn't mean you're a loser. Right?
Don't let your geography define you. I mean, there are a lot of kids out there that are living and their parents are barely making it through. Just do the best you can. It doesn't mean that you have to give everything of yourself. It doesn't mean that if you didn't get an A on this or even a C on the test, doesn't define you. If you're not going to go to Harvard or CU Boulder and you have to go to, a community college, that's perfectly fine. That might be your path.
And you will find your purpose.
And you will find your purpose. It doesn't matter what society says. So screw society. And that is something I have learned the hard way. I expected my own son, Nick, you got to go to school. He hated school. Come on, just try, get A's and B's. That's all I'm asking for you. It's going to open doors. He knew what his path was. And his path was not going to college. His path was to go run with BTR and do the best he could with that. And even though I did support that, I still wanted him to go above and beyond. And I was wrong. I'll be the first one to say it. I'm wrong. And I will live with that for the rest of my life. But I am telling parents, I am telling kids, screw society. Do you. Do what makes you happy. Fulfill your heart. That's all that matters.
Definitely. That's such a beautiful message. I 100% agree. I think that right now, like what I'm seeing in society is that people focus too much on the external and what people view and what society wants you to do, and not enough on the internal of like, okay, well, it starts in here first and then it starts out here. And I think that's one of the underlying messages of the Do Something podcast too, is like, do something, not even for anybody else, just do it for yourself. Like get yourself in straight, see what you want to do, follow that path and keep running there. I think there's so many distractions that you get nowadays with social media at some people, TikTok and some other things. Like there's the bar is constantly being set higher and higher and higher, and people are just saying, how am I supposed to reach those standards? Well, they're not even standards that are put on you. It's just what standards that you're putting on yourself. So how can you get rid of those? Look internal, not externally. So
yeah,
that's
exactly. I mean, you're do something great today, right? It could be as simple as paying somebody a compliment that has, it could be the simplest of things. That could be your greatest thing that you do today. It doesn't have to be something big, but just some random act of kindness.
Yeah. And one thing too, kind of talking about like the some of the initiatives that
BTR is doing. I know that you guys are very well connected in kind of like the mental health space here in Colorado, but I'm for our audience, like what are some things that you guys are doing to kind of support mental health here and around the United States and everywhere else?
Well, first and foremost, we're giving kids a voice. We're allowing kids to run with all these amazing ideas to bring awareness. We're educating as many parents out there as we possibly can to how to pay attention to their kids and see some of the warning signs. And sometimes there are no warning signs, but just how you can talk to your kids, how to talk about mental illness with your kids. We are out there finding some of the best non-traditional therapies that we can find, like horse therapy, dog therapy, art therapy, even your non-traditional talk therapist that maybe will meet you at a coffee house or take you fishing, go for a walk. Those are some of the initiatives those are just some.
BTR Lounge.
The BTR Lounge is our other one that I'm proud of. Every 2 weeks, we do a group therapy online. It's totally free. We just want kids in there, and it's one of my favorite therapists ever. She's really amazing, so amazing that kids see her on the side. Just really what we're doing with BTR, it's talk, talk, talk. You cannot talk enough about this. Erasing the stigma, allowing kids to come to our house and tell us, hey, can we do this for BTR? Can we do that? How can we bring awareness? And giving them a voice to do however they feel they need to get the message out there.
On one of the pages for Brought to Reality's website, I'm really proud of the Teen BTR page. It's people like Joe Sakic, Von Miller, Cortland Sutton that are standing up and showing that they support BTR, right? And by doing that, they understand that the issue is real. And if Von Miller can say, hey, it's okay, then me as a person, I should be able to say it's okay, right? So that's a page that we continuously add musicians, athletes, artists, just so people know that it's everywhere.
I like that. I think it's really important to see other like influencers, like people that are celebrities, like you're just saying, to share that, because it does feel very lonely, and to see that, oh, actually, like this role model of mine says that, you know, it's okay and you'll get through it, you know. So I think that's very important. And to kind of also go back to what Maria mentioned earlier about like people that are really struggling. When like in high school, I had this feeling consistently, like sophomore year, junior year, where I was always felt down, like a low point all the time. But I kept telling myself that it's like, this could be better tomorrow. I don't know. I'm just not like, I just kept pushing it away from me and separating it from myself. And so I think I love how you mentioned it's so important to accept and realize that you are actually experiencing these things rather than trying to keep pushing it away from you, because it doesn't help. You're not going to get any better. First, you have to acknowledge it. And then the second point that I love that you brought up is like, again, the support system. It's like you have to recognize that you're going through something and then be courageous enough to reach out to people that are there for you, because it is very hard to tell sometimes, especially if you're putting on these masks, that it's hard for people around you to tell that you're really struggling. So it's important it's hard, extremely hard, but it's important that people that do put on these masks see others that are actually reaching out and being vulnerable, because that's the first step.
One very positive thing about the BTR Lounge is it doesn't have to be interactive. So somebody that struggles, that is interested, can be on the call and listen to others talk about how they struggle, and hear a trained therapist work with them through their issues. And even if that person doesn't speak up and say, hey, these are my struggles, down the road, they may be willing to, right? Because they've heard enough, they feel like it's a safe space, but they're also getting education about what works for other people. And that's something that they could potentially work with themselves.
But I think in group therapy, what the kids are seeing is that they're not alone. They're not the only ones feeling this way. And that's an incredible amount of validation that they need to eventually open up and seek help.
We have a lot of young adults that they're creating the initiatives for us. We have sororities, we have fraternities, we have high school projects that kids are asking, can we collaborate with BTR because we want to spread the message too. There have been so many success stories on the BTR platform that were absolutely not initiated by BTR. And that's the greatest thing about this, is those that want to speak up, those that want to try to help others are able to do that.
For somebody who is, or for people who are looking to get involved in BTR or help support BTR, what are some ways that they can do that?
It's simple. Spread the message, talk about it, send people to our website so they can get resources from there, buy our apparel so that we can help pay for therapies for those that can't afford it. I was looking today, I think we've paid for 68 therapy sessions for kids. And it's all about spreading awareness, talking to your peers, being open. Bring up the word suicide. Are you suicidal? Or look, you've been partying a lot lately. What's going on? Like, it's all about talking and spreading awareness. That's how people can spread BTR around and be kind to one another, be compassionate to one another, call us. I mean, that's the most anybody can do for us, honestly, is just to spread our message around. We did not lose Nick in vain. We lost him to save others. I truly believe that from the bottom of my heart, that as much as I want my son here with me, as much as I miss him, I know that he is saving lives. He left us a gift, honestly. BTR was a gift that he left us. He said it was going to be big. We had no idea.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And that's all the questions that we had for this podcast. And honestly, it has been one of my favorite podcasts to record. It is just such a moving story and such an inspiring story as well, that it's like the battle is not over yet, we're working towards it. So it's just so beautiful. So thank you so much for joining us today here and to giving us your time to share this message.
Anytime. Thank you guys for asking us and for having us be a part of your podcast.
Once again, thank you so much, Will and Maria Bales, for joining us on this episode of the Do Something podcast. Below, you'll find more information about Brought to Reality, as well as some mental health resources. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and catch us on the next one.